in Chennai. I'm from Chennai. Welcoming cloud developers for this conference is a big pride. I welcome you all. Very warm welcome. Kalai Vanakangal. But looks like energy-wise a bit low. Is it because you had a lot of breakfast or you have not eaten any breakfast? Some energy we can show before we can get started? Cool. That's good. That's so nice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. See, this is a technical event and you know, when you have technical event, you have technical issues, right? We never have a smooth one. Let's see how the thing goes. So the organizers have done a fantastic job of putting this kind of a best-in-class facility for you to give this in-person connect, right, for all of us. That's what Elias mentioned, right? We do digital, we do so many things with technology, but nothing to beat what we meet and do, right? So I really value this. We'll make the best use of our time. And in terms of Keynote, right? So this is the second consecutive one I'm doing. So earlier we met, I think some of you, most of you, with Global Azure Bootcamp in Chennai. So context-wise, I'm trying to keep as, can someone help me? As relevant as possible, okay? Okay, great. Okay. So we thought like what we can do, right, in terms of title. When we kickstart an event, power-packed like this, you saw speakers coming all over the world, many parts of India, having some really intensive sessions going on as 5 tracks, right? Day 1, day 2. But something has to set a tone or the stage, right, for this event. So we chose, how is it like, you know, for a modern engineer, we talk about, right? Modern engineer. How is it like for you, right? So that's what I want to bring it in terms of connecting with each one of you. I try my best because when you talk about cloud conference, we talk about people coming from diverse backgrounds, right? Some of you are infrastructure network, some of you data, some are application, like security, etc., right? We try to be as generic as possible. Firstly, a quick intro about myself. See, I'm Madan. I work with EPAM as a director, technology solutions. My role goes, what I do is I head the technology consulting for the cloud. As part of this role, I predominantly work with our customers. You know, understand what they're doing now, what they're trying to do, and I help them in their cloud adoption journey. So that's very, very key. So when we discuss with the organizers, I want to bring this perspective to you, what I discuss with the executives, what they are thinking, and how you can align yourself, okay? That's a key. As far as my experience goes, in the 24 years, you know, there are a lot of things I do, but relevant things to pick up. 2 things I would like to bring. One is the product engineering. The first 17 years, all went into product engineering. The last 7 years, I focused on cloud transformation, but my key, if you see, my passion or the focus is modernization aspect of cloud. When you talk about cloud, you migrate, you modernize, right? So I help customers modernize their existing apps or build greenfield applications, right? So that's the thing that I want to bring today, and I see a lot of relevance, which I'll explain you why. Okay, I said I'm a consultant, right? So what I do, typically, I first set the context. I talk what is in scope and what is not in scope, or assumptions, right? Let's do something like that, okay? The last 2 years been very, very special for us, all of us, right? Pandemic, we were at home, we are working from home, we are doing different things, right? So let's do something. Well, let's have a quick video and we'll discuss what is not in scope with the video. It's just a 1-minute video, and then I'll take you through what is in scope for the rest of the session. Okay? Are you game? A video? Would that pep you up a little bit? Okay? Somebody to help me? Yeah. Yeah. Extend பண்ணுங்க வீடியோ வரல.
Hey, so sorry I'm late. I just, no worries. I'm sure there was a lot of traffic from your bedroom to your living room. You know how it is, Monday mornings. Today is Wednesday.
So does this resonate? The last 2 years? At least for me, for sure. Many a times I switched on the video or the camera where I should not have. Sometimes I didn't unmute, Many a times what all, clothes we were wearing, managing the things and all that, right? So definitely this is one side of the modern engineer I see, which I'm also I would be, to be honest, I also did the last 2 years, but that's not what I'm talking about, okay? But what is important for us to notice, this pandemic has had a huge impact in the way how we are working. We call about hybrid work, right? And how customers think. That's very important, okay? Now let's move on. Let's now talk about context, right? We spoke what is not in scope. We're not talking about this engineer. We're talking about a modern engineer who aligns with it. What do you think we should take as a modern engineer? How do you define modern? 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What would be appropriate? What do you think? What range we'll take to compare the modern part? Some numbers? 2, okay, that's close. Let's take 3 years, okay? Let's see, you are all working professionals. You are doing already some modern stuff, right? But there is something that has happened in the last 3 years. That's what we are going to look at. You may be already doing. If not, I think this is something that's going to help you. Okay, so we are talking about 2022 forward. This 3 years has made a huge impact. And this next 3 years, I see much of you are going to get transformed. That's the context we are talking about, right? So what I call is the cloud native way. Why cloud native? The definition you all know. Why is what I'm going to clarify. First, I'll take the first 5 minutes to talk about the why part. Then we'll go to what and then the how part, okay? So why cloud native way? Why? I define a modern software engineer is going to be a cloud native engineer. Why? See, cloud is like English, regardless of what you study, whether it's engineering, whether it's medical, law, you all need to know English, right? Same way for the business, whether you run your workload, whether it's an application, integration, data, anything that you do is going to be on cloud. Agree with me? Yes? Okay. What is cloud? You have private, public, hybrid, we call. So that cloud I'm saying. I'm not saying only public cloud, right? It's going to be in cloud. So what is cloud native engineer and how the 3 years that we see, how we can set us for that, right? Firstly, I'll cover some business priorities. This is very important for you to understand. And this is something that you will hear from me as a consultant. See, there are a lot of technologists who talk. The technical stuff is one thing, but how you implement technology, the rubber hitting the road, they say, right? That's very important. So that's a perspective I'm bringing for you. When we talk about business priorities, product companies, right? Product companies innovate, right? They're more SaaSified now and all that, right? Enterprises are slowly catching up on cloud. Where do you think they are falling today? I'm saying 2022, or we are entering 2023. Where do you think the customers are today? I'm talking about the major proportion. We can't say everyone. Majority of our customers, where do you think they are? Explorers. Okay, that's cool. Actually, you're kind of right. cloud was introduced, by Amazon formally, like EC2 in 2007. So it's been 15 years we are running the VMs, okay? So now we are not still talking or convincing customers, how you can, run your, VMs that you are running virtually on-premise, on a private or a public cloud. That's not the topic. They had security concerns, all of that. I think we are over now, right? We are not talking about re-platforming, benefits around it. We are over it. What is happening now is two things. Some of them who started early, they are maturing, but something happened in between. That is the part I want to highlight to you. I think that will set the tone for you to align what I mean by as modern engineer who's going to be a cloud native engineer. Let's look at that. How many of you watched 2021 Ignite session? Satya Nadella's keynote. Very few. That's surprising. I think you should keep tap of what is happening, especially in Ignite kind of a session. They're talking about a lot of updates happening. Last week there was Ignite. What I'm touching is the previous Ignite, not one that concluded last week. So what Satya Nadella highlighted is digital first responders. What does that mean? If you look at it, there is a big shift that has happened post-pandemic called tech intensity. What is tech intensity? If you see, there is a huge focus on technology suddenly. And where is it coming from? It's coming from all the sectors, not just the tech sector. That's the important part for you to know. You get the point. Take an example. Our personal lives, those who have children, they started to attend tuition through Teams, online, like Zoom, right? Some of them still continue now, right? What about talking to doctors for any consultation? The doctors for the first time didn't want to meet you in person, right? They say, no, you stay there, send me the pictures, right? Or I will look at the tab. This is a big shift that has happened. First 3 months, we all thought COVID is going to be 6 months. Then after a year, we thought it's never going to end, right? We get used to it, right? This is a new normal, right? So a lot of businesses started to think seriously about digital innovation. This is very, very, very important for you to note. So the tech intensity is actually not caused by the IT industries where we go sell customers. The customers have chosen every industry to avail themselves or make use of cloud in the right way. So this is something that's super important for you to know. See, as a practitioner, when I work with customers, what I do is not just telling them what is new, what is good. That's easy. When you talk as a consultant, what you do is you not only tell what is important, but you help customers achieve it. So when you look at the typical journey, please have a look at it. Just try to digest. Sorry, the bottom portion may not be that very visible for you. But what I'm trying to show is, when you talk about the landscape, the bottom part is what the customers have been maintaining the systems. The past has been more to run and maintain a system. But when they switched to cloud, the major part was for them, you think it's about modernization, right? The first step. Actually, if you look at, when I modernize, what I expect out of it, when you look at the caption I put, is business agility, which means what? I need to release my changes very quickly, right? That's important, which means you're talking about DevOps. To implement DevOps in an enterprise setup is not going to be straightforward. So it's a heavy lifting that they had to do with people part, process part. That's a much more complex one, much more subjective than you look at a technical architecture, right? It's not that I cannot go implement this IoT, but I need to prep my organization to work with IoT and the dynamics around it. That's the part. So what they took, they had a 10-year roadmap. Okay, let's do this. I would say 5-year roadmap, but it becomes 10 years, right? Our metro, what happens? We say 3 years, or then 5 years. Then it becomes 10 years, right? Nobody tells the truth, right? That's all we are used to. Even this setup, we said we're going to get last night at that time. We got it in the morning, and almost in the last minute we were doing. This is the dynamics we are in, right? It's hard to plan or give, but we have a happy path. This is how we started. But look at one great example, what COVID taught us. A vaccine for you to design and roll out at a mass scale used to be a decade before. Can we wait for a decade? It happened in few months or a year. How did it happen? This is the special thing about the human part. When there is a drive or a situation where we need to do, we respond differently. And this is what Satya Nadella highlighted, digital first responders. Those who did not even have innovation in their plan, or those who wanted to achieve down the line, they've gone upside down. Let's do this first, because I can't survive in the business if I don't do it. You get the point? This is the shift that you need to note for the last 3 years. Why is it so different for you? Why cloud native becomes important? Because when I first modernize, I need not be cloud native. I can be cloud enabled, which means I lift and shift. I refactor, I re-platform. I was not ready to invest for innovation. But now the focus is, can I build something that is going to differentiate me in the business? This push is what is critical for us to know. And for me, as I told, you all come from diverse backgrounds. It's not possible for me to take, an engineer to, kind of contextually align with each one of your role. So I'm going to choose one thing, the app. Because application is what mostly the end user sees, right? The digital is all about user experience, you put it. So I'm just choosing that as an example. So with your relevant roles, please try to align with that. I'll try to extend wherever possible, but that's the thing. But you also see one more thing happening when you talk about Microsoft Cloud. It's not just the focus areas in terms of technology that is there. You also see the industry focus. You see Microsoft Cloud for healthcare. So now, the innovation cannot be just done with technology in mind. You have to make it more relevant for the specific industry, right? So that's another thing you need to look at, I would say. So now we kind of covered business priorities. Hope you got the gist of what I'm trying to say. The last 2 years have actually shaken up many enterprises. Product companies have been always in the forefront thinking, that's the way they work. But enterprises have been a little slow. Now, they shifted the dynamics, responding to the pandemic. That is why you see many of you got 2 offers, 3 job offers. Why? Why suddenly? It's not just the IT companies recruiting. It's individual, enterprises, they felt they need to uplift the IT. That created the intensity the last 2 years, and there is a lot more focus on cloud native, right, than before. And now coming to the engineer. So we discussed about the why part. Let's talk about what and how we are going to do, right? So I carefully chose this picture because I feel like now, there is a good balance in terms of gender. Yesterday I spoke with some speakers as well. We have a lot of speakers, come from not just men come and talk. There are a lot of women talking as well. And here in the audience, I see not just men sitting here. When you talk about engineers today, it's a good balance. And that's another appreciable thing that I see over the years. So as a modern engineer, when you start, what is important for you to know is, as a software engineer, you are not expected to be just to be too good at software. There is something else that you need to know, the adjunct disciplines. The new disciplines that have come, some of you already doing it, but it's important that we establish a common context, is the 3 areas. I'm not saying it's limited to 3, but these 3 are super important. We talk about security, we are talking about DevOps, and we are talking about site reliability. Because when you invest, you want agility, you want global reach, then you can't deliver with the same structure you have. I told you, the heavy lifting that happens, changing your processes, changing your team structure, that's not easy. Conway's law, what does it say? What you want to produce is a reflection of your org structure. So that's what they are doing. So if you don't understand these roles, if you don't align with those responsibilities, you're not going to be an effective, a modern engineer, okay? So let's look at each of these disciplines. So I was thinking, hey, you know what? We are telling something, come on in the morning, it's not be too, boring. Let's take some example that will excite you, right? See, in Corona time, I'm sure you all tried some hobbies, some of you tried motorbiking, some tried cycling, whatever passion you're doing, right? This is something that we all dream. Now you want to be a pilot, you want to be a motor, racer and all that. So just look at it. We all ride bikes or we drive cars. So what is differentiating a super bike rider. It's the same thing, right? They have the brakes, handlebar, clutch, whatever you call, accelerators. But what is it different if you look at it? The way they think. The first thing, see, I'm very passionate about this. I attended a course, so I got trained in a track. It was delivered by Rajini Krishnan, if you know. He's from Chennai. He's like, oh my God, he's a national champion for several years. He won Malaysian GP and all that. He's an excellent guide, but not maybe known to all of you. So what I learned is, first thing is, a bike is designed to stand on its own, unless you want to put it down. You see many times when racers fall down, the bike still gets up and goes, and then it will fall down when the momentum is lost. It actually stands up on its own. And the way you ride is, where you look is where your body, the mechanical memory that you have will lead you. You need to look. The same thing for a software engineer. You need to look what is expected out of you. I see some of the engineers when I work with, they don't see the bigger picture. They don't consider the adjunct angles. So a little bit more technically when you look at it. See, when you write, this is what you see, right? Most of us are good at this area, the central area. This is what you write, you do. But if you are a racer, you develop something called as a peripheral vision. It's a central vision, peripheral, the sides. So you need to be sure, because your braking, your technique, all need to be aligned. The same analogy I'm just trying to bring it. If you are a software engineer, you are super focused on your app or integration or whatever you do as a specialist work. That doesn't work anymore. If you are an engineer, you do your core work, but you need to focus on your adjunct disciplines as well. Does it mean that you are an expert in security? No. But you need to know what security requirements are, what the security engineer does, how to work with him. This is super important. So we're just taking this forward. First, let's look at software engineer. As a software engineer, what you need to redefine yourself before we look at the adjunct disciplines. Okay? We are good so far? Good? Excellent. So we'll look at first software engineer, what you need to do in this area first to be a cloud native engineer. See, I've just brought this see, when you talk about cloud maturity, so I'm bringing what Microsoft has designed. See, if you see the maturity, right, the cloud native is the highest in terms of maturity, right? You see on the right corner. I'm not going to take the theoretical route of what is cloud native. You all know it involves microservices, you containerize, implement DevOps. These are all one things that you all know, but there's something else we need to discuss. How to leverage cloud native is very, very important for you. I sometimes see people overdo. The point is, cloud native is not the only way to do. Please understand that. You need to be cloud native, but not only that. I've just taken another example. Let's take another transport example. See, initially, how did UK rule the world? They just used the sea route, right? It's been there for, I don't know how many centuries. Then, for better connectivity, railways came. Did it kill the shipping industry? No. Then, the last 60, 70 years, we are using aeroplanes, both for passenger, cargo. Did it kill the railways? No, we are building metro now. Please understand, earlier, we used one thing for everything. Then, another thing. That is what we are trying to address. We are not here to go and develop everything as a microservice. No. But there are certain use cases which are a very good fit for microservice. And there, if you are using a VM, then it's not good. Yesterday, I was talking to one of the speakers. He was talking about Book My Show. That even, maybe you should highlight later on the session, why Book My Show overnight had to switch from VMs to microservices or containers, Docker. If there was an event he was saying, sorry, I don't remember the exact reason. There was sudden booking happening. They couldn't handle it. So now companies think global. When you go multi-region, you can't have have a predictable, usage at times. You need elasticity and all that. There are use cases where you need to apply. Don't think microservices is the only way to do, right? From there, let's move on. Microsoft for many years had, partnership with system integrators, right? What did they give? Gold partner, silver partner. This is what they've been there for like 20 years, right? They redefined it last year, and effective this October, things are changing, right? the partners are now called solution partners. And the partners are now expected to have specialization. Are you guys aware of it? There is something called Azure specialization. How many are not aware of it? Okay, you got to look into it. So, but many are aware, that's a good news. So let's zoom into one specialization, okay? Application development, I told you, right? I can't cover all the areas. Let's take app now. What Microsoft is expecting you as a solution partner, and if you want to specialize and differentiate yourself, you know what? I'm specialized in app development. They are expecting something that you should do. For example, DevOps with GitHub, you're talking about Kubernetes, and then some modernization. Modernization is a bit, I would say, mishy-mashy. I would say both refactor, re-architect and all of that. But let's look at it, how we can take it forward. Among so many Azure services we have, so many tools we have, the good news is, there are certain things that become a standard. Don't you think? We all use Git, nothing else. That's correct? So I started with different source safe systems. Now it's not the case. Git has become almost a standard. Next, when you talk about containers, we talk Dockers. Okay, there is OCI, Open Container Initiative, where you also have other forms of containers, but we relate Docker now. We all are used to Docker, right? Docker kind of pioneered this, right? That's the good news. And then now, the same thing with orchestration. You have the container now, you want to orchestrate, it's Kubernetes. You go to any cloud platform. I'm not just talking about Amazon Web Services, I'm not talking about just Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, even OpenShift. Every platform or a service provider have kind of adopted Kubernetes as a standard. So we are living in a world where we are cross-leveraging open source. That's super important, right? We are inventing, we are outsourcing. Not outsourcing, open sourcing, sorry. That's what I work and it comes naturally for me. Open sourcing. What Google gave is Kubernetes, for example. What Microsoft gave, let's say TypeScript, right? All Google developers, right, who have started working on Angular are using TypeScript. So we are in an interdependent world. We open source, we adopt whichever is the best. I think that's something very nice to look at. But then, when you talk about Kubernetes, I don't want to emphasize that it's only end of the world Kubernetes. There are many areas you may do with simple functions, or you have now newer offerings coming as container apps. There will be always newer things coming. But I'm just talking about when you implement, you think the denominator first, then upskill, cross-skill based on the dynamics. The same goes, we have a session on Dapper, right? So if you have a much more complex system and you want, kind of a follow service mesh kind of a thing, then you need to bolt on something. And these things, if you look at, they work interchangeably with Kubernetes. So be sure, in Kubernetes, you have CKA, you have CKAD, Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. So Kubernetes is not just for administrators. Please, that should go away. If you want to be a better developer, you should know how your workload is going to run in Kubernetes. Let's look at how that is going to go, okay? Okay, we discussed about the tech stack. I don't want to really delve much on that. You have a lot of sessions where people are taking you through individual services, right? But traits, these are super important when you talk about being an effective, modern software engineer, whether you're cloud or not. First thing I would say is you need to be client-centric. Is your organization telling you to be following product mindset? Do you hear that product mindset? Yes or no? Product mindset. Whether you are an IT service company or not, you are now following agile. You're following product. What does it mean? We want to put customer first, right? There are two things. It's not just the functional part. As an engineer now, you should start focusing on your non-functional as well. You should ask the usage metrics. Start with that. How it is, we look into it, okay? A little bit more later. Then continuous improvement. For some developers, what is continuous improvement? When I develop, there will be a bug. I fix it, release it. I am continuously improving. Is that what we are talking about? No. This continuous improvement is very different. What we are talking about, this is when you are working cloud native, we have to accept that there are unknowns. This is what we tell our customers. It's not going to be a very straightforward journey for you. Imagine you as a developer, you are being asked whether, let's say, you are implementing event-driven design and you are leveraging some serverless, offerings. Let's say Azure Service Bus. You're using Cosmos DB. These are all serverless, more usage driven. How do you think you're going to predict Cosmos use, R use, request units, SQL use, DT use? You are going to learn, right, over a period of time. Do you think we can give a perfect sizing on day one? No. You need to develop, monitor, measure, improve. Secondly, when you develop a big monolith and now you decompose it into multiple microservices and use many different services, you are going to have reliability issues. That's a given. That's a given. So you need to be fault tolerant. Reliability needs to be packed in. It means you need to think that something can go wrong. You need to understand it, fix it. That mindset is very important. It's not just like, I know Kubernetes, so I'm a modern engineer. I know Docker. That's not the only thing. I hope you get the point. And now we talk about domain-driven design. You guys have heard about it? Using it? How many are using DDD? Very few. Okay, that's surprising. You heard of the books like Eric Evans' Domain-Driven Design? You heard about it? It's a fantastic book. If you read, very soon you'll come to know you don't understand anything. Honestly, I read it, I could not understand anything. It was some years back. I read 2-3 times, I couldn't get it, honestly. My honest advice to you is, when you are going to do DDD, first develop something. That is when you will know what he is actually telling. You know, there are certain things you will not understand, right? See, for example, and I don't want to give some personal examples, but certain things you have to do to really understand what it is, right? Domain-driven design. First develop, then you go back. I give you some pointers in the next slide that will help. But this is super important. Now coming to this, when we talk about cloud, invariably we're talking about back-end systems. We're not talking a lot about front-end. While there are micro front-ends that you develop, when you say cloud engineer, you are deemed more like a back-end developer. And that API, you got to be very strong in that. I give you some pointers in the next slide. Whatever you do, any cloud platform you go, you have something called well-architected framework. Are you guys using it? Are you guys implementing it? Well-architected framework? How many say yes, using? So the rest are not using well-architected framework? Okay, then I think I need to maybe downgrade from cloud native to something else, because well-architected framework, whether you are running cloud native or not, that should be your starting point. And this principles, what cloud platform supports you as a developer is phenomenal. Whether it's Azure or not, any cloud platform, this is common. Okay, we'll talk about that as well. And last and the most important thing in my opinion, apart from the traits we discussed, when you design in the cloud, please use design patterns. You should take a moment to see which pattern you're going to follow. It will be a combination of patterns. Don't try to do things on your own. See, we evolved as a developer by writing code, then calling libraries. Then now we are in the world of framework, right? Framework gives you a package. Whether you're a front-end developer, Angular is a framework, right? Your back-end developer, ASP.NET is a framework. You want to talk to your database, ORM, entity framework. We are in a framework world. You are already given a framework which supports a lot of these capabilities. And when you implement on top of it, you should align it with design patterns. Please don't overlook that. And when you talk about cloud native, you would have heard about 12-factor, right? How about 12-factor? How many of you heard 12-factor? Very few. Okay, that's cool. See, 12-factor is something, it's commonly used, you would hear it. This actually, pioneered by a team called Heroku. So now they've been acquired, not now 10 years back, by Salesforce. This team, what they said, I don't know how much they thought through cloud, what it is today. But a lot of that are so fundamental when you develop cloud native solutions, right? But then the 12 factors we're talking about are not 12 anymore. If you go to Microsoft Cloud Native, you will see 3 more factors added to it. So that's what I'm saying. When you talk about modern cloud application design, according to Microsoft, they thought through 3 more. Just look at quickly. API first. That wasn't probably explicitly mentioned there. That's something very important. Telemetry. When you look at logs, the point number 11 that you see, I'm going to spend a few minutes on the telemetry as well. This is super important. See, for me, imagine you go to a doctor, the doctor look at your pulse and use the torch and, kind of giving you an advice is one thing. When you go, you do the blood test, you do the CT scan, you do the MRI scan, you actually get to know what is happening. And then you're able to make a much more informed decision, right? That's what the telemetry gives. Let's focus on that. And the authentication and authorization is important, but I'm going to cover it with another topic that I'm going to cover with security, right? Just make a note of it. When you start cloud native, there are a few things that I highlighted, but 12 factor is very fundamental. It's not just the technology, a lot to do with the processes, right? Okay, so this something what I'm showing now, the matrix, is something that I have put together, and this is something, I'll share this deck with all of you. Have a look at it. I like to incubate an engineer as a cloud native engineer. No matter what you've done, whatever projects you do, this is a great opportunity for you to make yourself well-rounded, right? There are various areas. I've just put DevOps engineer and the SRE also, along with it, but it's too crowded, right? Let's zoom in maybe one section being application developer, right? One area, let's zoom in. See, when you start working, when we talk about developing an API, we are doing contract first, right? We are not going and implementing straight away. As an engineer, you start working with the wireframes, visual design. This is something you should start acquainting yourself with, right? And then another thing is usage metrics. How many of you ask, how many times this screen is visited? Which is the calling screen? How much is the data loaded? This is important for you to design your microservice. Because when you go microservice, you can't say in your Kubernetes how many pods, as a replica you want to keep. For scalability, why? Because you are looking at the usage. Okay, this time of the day or throughout the day, this is what is going to be the usage. You should start that in mind. You cannot just start, let me put the screen, put some test data. No, it won't work. You should start with that. And also as a developer, when you see Git, you're talking about feature branch. Yeah. I need to go fast, they're saying. I will rush through now, right? So feature-driven development, feature flags are important, I'll share. One thing about domain-driven design, I would say, they are strategic, tactical. There are two things in it. Start with the tactical. That's a good starting point. Look at the DDD implementation in ASP.NET. That's a good reference to start, right? Spoke about, HTTP. I don't have much time. Some of the pointers, just have a look at it. I'll just rush through. Looking at the core part, right? Now let's look at the adjunct one, but in a little fast-forward manner. Security. See, there is a session later today on zero trust. This is important. Please spend time. Earlier, security used to be perimeter network security, right? Now we are talking about at every level you're expected. I wanted to cover them, but I don't have the time. I'll rush through. Another hint. You talk about security, there are compliance-related things. Microsoft has renamed Azure Service Security Benchmark as now Microsoft Security Benchmark. Have a look at it. And then an emerging area. Also, there are sessions on about Microsoft Defender. They're very important. Looking at cloud security posture management. Please, this is an important discipline that I think you as a developer, individual services you do, the workload protection, you need to be aware of, right? Now, in the recent Ignite, they've announced they are now extending Defender for DevOps as well, right? So they're covering many, many services, and this gives you foundational protection. And when you go to your advisor, you have a security advisor where you get recommendation, you also get alerts. The alerts come from Defender. This is continuous improvement, what I'm referring to, right? So you know what is happening. Sorry, I'm rushing through, but the security area, don't ignore. It's going to be difficult if you don't have a starting point then, right? Let's look at DevOps. Okay. DevOps, again, how do I make you remember? There is something called as DORA. How many know DORA? I'm not talking about this DORA. Definitely not. I'm talking about DevOps research and assessments. So this is another initiative, again, by Google. Now, when they thought through, they put something. There are things that are fundamentally changing. We are not just talking about basic metrics like CPU usage, memory, and all that. You have to think from a direction. I told you, motorbike, what you see is where you go. What you are supposed to see is first, as a developer, speed or velocity. And another thing is stability. If you do something quickly, what will happen? Things can break. You have to balance both. And if you don't have this, then it's going to be very difficult for you, for the project, and for the customer. What they're looking at is lead time for changes, which means the moment a change request comes, how quickly you respond to it. Deployment, how quickly you're able to take it. And if we quickly do, what do you do? There is a now measure called change failure rate. This shows if you're changing and there is a failure in that, that is again will be focused on you as a developer. And time to restore the service. There is a logical relation to the next topic I'm going to talk about. Please make a note of it. Again, I wanted to spend time, but I don't have much time to take you through the details. But then this flow gives you, ultimately I'm telling you, you start quickly, you build and deploy quickly. Okay, there are no change failures, great. System is working well. End of the day, the system has to be available. How many of you open any app or a website, if it's not loading quickly, you just switch, right? When you do that, and imagine what your customers would think. Your systems have to be highly available. Reliability is behind availability. You should know it, you should maintain it. Your ultimate aim should be a system cannot be down. Imagine one of your services is not working, you should have a graceful approach to it. That if you don't think from your design point of view, you're going to set this for failure. So please keep this in mind. And when you talk about deployment, when you make some complex changes, please adopt patterns. We're not talking about big bang all the time. You know canary, you know blue-green deployment you would have heard. There is also progressive exposure. There are a lot of patterns that are available. You got to be an advocate and you need to understand how this works to work with your DevOps guys, right? So we kind of covered DevOps in a quick manner, but I'll take time especially on the SRE part because I think this is one important advice I want to see this in your mind as a key takeaway. So when you look at SRE, right, this screen is something that you heard of. How many of you look at cloud native landscape? Very few. That's strange. Okay, I've been following since 2017. This was much more readable. Now I tried to zoom, still not there. I want to focus a little bit on the observability. The monitoring part is the easier part, guys. Don't only focus on that. Look at an important thing, tracing. We talk about open telemetry. This is reaching every platform. Every vendor is trying to support. Have a look at it. It's an incubation, but still good enough for you to use in your production. Please look into it. Again, when you design your system, you need to kind of give that real-time testing. For chaos engineering, I've used some toolkits in the past, but this Litmus looks to be really promising. If you look at it, it comes with a complete package. It's full open source. And here you see the underline, DevOps and SRE work together. So you as a developer, you need to work and kind of emulate the situation. And these frameworks are free and effective, come with a complete suite for you to use. So my intention is not to take you through what it is, but rather give a quick impression so that you know these things are happening. Hopefully you get an idea what I mentioned, right? A software engineer to be a cloud engineer, you know, when you talk about in the modern world, this is what we expect from you. Cloud is going to be there in every project you're going to work. The maturity may differ. I'm not saying everything is going to be cloud native, but if you want to set yourself for the future, you upskill yourself on the cloud native part. And another takeaway from the last week's thing, what Satya Nadella presented on Ignite 2022, right? Last week that happened, do more with less, right? This sounds like some project manager, right? You know, do more with less. But these are the points put. I don't have the time to walk through. Have a look at it. There are new things happening. That's always fun. And be in Chennai, right? I would say thank you, Nandri, Vanakkam. Thank you so much.